Okay, so picture this, if you will.
Okay.
It's 1912, warm summer evening.
Mm-hmm.
The Moore family, Josiah, Sarah, and their 4 children, are heading home after like a lively church social in Villisca, Iowa.
Yeah.
Small town, quiet town.
Small town America.
Exactly. And you have Lena and Ina Stillinger,
Okay.
2 young sisters.
Yeah.
And they're giggling, whispering excitedly about their sleepover.
Fun.
Yeah, you can just feel the anticipation.
Sleepovers are the best.
The best, right?
Yeah.
The air, it's thick with that freshly cut grass smell and just the sense of peace,
Like a Hallmark movie.
Totally. But that promise,
Right.
that sense of normalcy is about to be completely shattered. Because lurking in the shadows is just this darkness that will forever stain the history of this town.
Oh, that's eerie.
It's a case that continues to haunt and perplex us.
Really?
Over a century later. The brutal and still unsolved murders of 8 people.
Oh, my goodness.
6 of them children.
Oh.
In the Moore residence.
Wow, that's crazy.
Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Crime series. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Now, let's dive into this case.
Let's do it.
It's June 9th, 1912.
Okay.
And the Moore family and their guests, they retire for the night. They're unaware that an intruder has silently entered their home.
That's scary.
By morning, the entire household is discovered brutally murdered in their beds.
Oh, God.
The weapon of choice, an axe. The sheer brutality, right?
It's hard to even imagine.
They didn't just use the sharp edge of the axe. They used the blunt side.
God.
Blow after blow.
Oh, my goodness.
Highlighting this, like,
rage.
Or maybe just a chillingly cold and calculated.
It's calculated. It's methodical. It's hard to even fathom.
The terror that those families must felt in their final moment.
Oh, absolutely.
And the scene itself, it's like something out of a nightmare, right?
Yeah. The details are really disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
The killer covered the mirrors and the windows.
Oh, wow.
And there was a bowl of bloody water left in the kitchen.
What?
Yeah. And even more perplexing, a plate of uneaten food was just sitting on the table.
So, like, they were interrupted.
It seems like
in the middle of dinner or something.
It's really strange.
These weren't simply acts of violence. There was something, like...
Theatrical, almost?
Theatrical, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost as if the killer was trying to send a message.
A message? Like, what do you think that could be?
Right, like to create this tableau of horror.
A tableau, that's a good word for it.
Yeah, but to what end?
Right.
What message could possibly justify such a heinous act?
Yeah, that's the question that's plagued investigators for over a century.
It's crazy to think about.
It really is.
That this was back in 1912.
Right.
Forensic science was, in
its infancy.
Yeah, it was just beginning.
Yeah.
And the crime scene was quickly overrun by onlookers.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah.
So they contaminated a lot of the evidence.
Contaminating crucial evidence.
Oh, that's a shame.
Imagine being an investigator.
Yeah.
Walking into that chaos.
I can't even imagine.
You have a horrific crime, limited technology, and a town that's completely on edge.
Right.
Where do you even begin to look for answers?
It's like a nightmare scenario for an investigator.
Absolutely.
But despite the challenges, several suspects emerged, and each with their own, compelling but ultimately inconclusive links to the case.
Give me some examples.
Yeah, so one of them was Frank Jones.
Okay.
He was a prominent businessman in Villisca.
Okay.
And rumor had it that he held a grudge against Josiah Moore.
Oh, so classic, like...
rivalry, revenge.
Revenge, yeah.
Exactly.
Did they ever find a concrete connection between Jones and the murders?
Sadly, no.
Really?
They couldn't find any solid evidence linking him to the crime scene. So he remained a person of interest, but the lack of proof really stalled that line of inquiry.
So we have a suspect with a potential motive, but no hard evidence.
Right.
What about other people that were on their radar?
Well, another individual who became a focal point was Reverend George Kelly.
Okay.
A traveling preacher who had a history of kind of erratic behavior.
Interesting.
And what's really interesting about Kelly is that he was actually in Villisca on the night of the murders.
No way.
Yeah, and he even confessed at one point.
What?
But he later recanted, claiming it was coerced.
A confession? Even a recanted one? That must just, like...
Oh, it sent shockwaves through the investigation, yeah.
Yeah, so was there anything to support that initial confession?
Not really, no.
Oh, wow.
There wasn't enough tangible evidence to link him to the murders.
So another potential suspect with a possible motive
Right.
and a shaky confession,
Hmm.
but still no concrete link.
No concrete link to the crime scene, no.
Did any other suspects emerge with maybe a stronger connection?
There was one more that drew a lot of attention.
Yep.
A man named Henry Lee Moore.
Henry Moore.
And what makes him interesting is that he was a known serial killer with a disturbingly similar modus operandi to the Villisca Axe murderer.
Wait, were we talking about the Henry Lee Moore who murdered his own mother and grandmother with an axe?
The very same.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had this pattern of targeting families, often while they slept, and brutally killing them with an axe.
Giving me chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a chilling case.
So was Henry Lee Moore ever officially connected to the Villisca murders?
Unfortunately, no.
Really?
Despite the eerie similarities in his methods and his presence in the Midwest around the time of the Villisca murders,
Right.
investigators couldn't definitively place him at the scene.
So 3 intriguing suspects.
Yeah,
Each with their own set of questions, unsettling details,
right.
but none of them definitively linked to the crime.
Exactly.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah, it really is.
Where did investigators go from there?
Well, that's a great question.
Did they explore other possibilities?
Yeah,
Besides revenge or personal grudges?
they did. They had to think outside the box a little bit. You're absolutely right. It is like a puzzle with missing pieces. And with those key suspects kind of slipping through the cracks, investigators started exploring, alternative theories. One of the most compelling and unsettling theories that kind of came up was the possibility of a ritualistic killing.
Oh, wow. Now that takes this case into like a whole new dimension of darkness. What led investigators down that path? What evidence, if any, pointed towards something so sinister?
Well, those seemingly bizarre details that we talked about earlier, the covered mirrors, the bowl of bloody water, those things weren't typical of crimes just driven by, personal vengeance. They suggested something a little more symbolic, something maybe rooted in a darker belief system.
It's almost as if the killer was like staging a scene, creating this like macabre tableau. But what kind of ritual could possibly involve such brutality, especially against, innocent children?
Yeah, that's a question that has really haunted researchers and fueled so many theories over the years. Some have explored like the possibility of, occult practices, secret societies, even whispers of those early 20th century anxieties about social change, like almost manifesting in this horrifying way.
It's a disturbing thought that someone could be driven to commit such an act based on like distorted beliefs or a warped ideology.
Yeah.
But is there like any historical context for this kind of theory? Were there any known groups or practices back then that might align with such a horrific ritual?
Well, you have to remember, at the early 20th century was a time of like really significant social upheaval. Immigrant populations were rising, traditional values were being challenged, and there was this growing fascination mixed with fear of the occult. It's not, entirely implausible to think that some fringe groups or, individuals might have subscribed to beliefs that could have, in their minds, justified an act like this.
Okay, so we have this unsettling theory of a ritualistic killing, rooted in this period of social anxiety, this burgeoning fascination with the occult. But is there any tangible evidence to support this theory? Anything beyond those, like, unusual details at the crime scene?
Sadly, no. And while the ritualistic theory is really compelling, and it certainly adds a layer of complexity and intrigue to the case, it remains largely speculative. We can't definitively say that those details were anything more than, the actions of a really disturbed individual.
It's fascinating and honestly a little terrifying to think about the motivations that could drive someone to commit such an act. But let's maybe shift gears a bit. We've talked about suspects with personal grudges and the chilling possibility of, a ritualistic motive. What other theories have emerged over the years? Were there any other avenues that investigators explored?
Well, one theory that has always had this morbid fascination, I guess you could say, is the idea that the Villisca Axe murders weren't an isolated incident, but rather, the work of a serial killer, someone preying on families across the Midwest.
Now that's a terrifying thought. The idea of a killer just moving from town to town, leaving this trail of death and unanswered questions in their wake. Is there any historical evidence to support this theory?
Interestingly enough, yeah. the early 1900s did see a string of unsolved axe murders across the Midwest, and many of these cases involved families attacked in their homes, often with the blunt end of the axe, and often with like no apparent motive, strikingly similar to the Villisca case.
So the Villisca murders, as horrific as they were, might not be unique. They could be part of a larger, even more disturbing pattern. Did investigators ever identify any individuals who might fit the profile of a serial killer operating in that region at the time?
There was one individual who always lingered in the background of this theory, and we've already talked about him, Henry Lee Moore.
Ah, yes. The serial killer with the chillingly similar modus operandi. But if investigators couldn't connect him to Villisca, why does his name keep coming up in relation to this theory?
Well, despite the lack of a direct link to the Villisca murders, Henry Lee Moore's crimes cast a long shadow over the case. The similarities in his methods, his tendency to target families using the blunt end of an axe, and even his habit of covering mirrors in some of his crimes. It's just too striking to ignore.
It's almost like a ghost in the machine, this shadowy figure lurking in the background, impossible to definitively pin down, but always present in the narrative. Did investigators ever explore the possibility that Henry Lee Moore might have had, like, accomplices, or maybe even inspired, copycat killings?
That's an excellent question, and it's one that has been debated by researchers for decades. The possibility of copycat killings fueled by all that sensationalized media coverage of Moore's crimes is certainly a chilling thought.
It adds another layer of complexity to this already perplexing case. So we have these three, prevailing theories: revenge, ritualistic killing, and the work of a serial killer. Perhaps even, copycat crimes inspired by the notoriety of Henry Lee Moore. Yet, despite all of these possibilities, the Villisca Axe murders remain officially unsolved. Why do you think that is?
The Villisca Axe Murders present like this perfect storm of investigative challenges, a contaminated crime scene, limited forensic technology, a web of potential suspects with inconclusive links. And it's all contributed to this enduring mystery. And then you add to that the passage of time, faded memories and lost evidence, and you have a case that may, forever remain shrouded in darkness.
It's almost as if the passage of time has only, deepened the mystery, allowing those unanswered questions to take on a life of their own. But despite the lack of a definitive resolution, the Villisca Axe murders continue to, captivate and intrigue us.
Yeah.
What do you think is the enduring legacy of this case? Why does it still hold such power over our imagination after all these years?
Well, the Villisca Axe murders, they represent more than just an unsolved crime, right? It's a story that taps into our deepest fears, the vulnerability of our homes, the innocence of childhood so brutally extinguished, and the idea that evil can lurk in even, the most seemingly peaceful corners of the world.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought, the idea that no place is truly safe, that darkness can just intrude upon our lives in the most unexpected and horrific ways.
Exactly. And I think that lack of a definitive answer, it only amplifies that fear, that unease. It leaves us with this sense of incompleteness, a yearning for a resolution that may never come.
It's like a wound that never fully heals,
Yeah.
a scar on the collective consciousness of the town and the nation. But the Villisca Axe murders are more than just this chilling crime.
Huh.
They've also become kind of a cultural phenomenon, haven't they? Like
Yeah.
a source of inspiration for books, movies, and even a dark tourist destination.
Absolutely. The Villisca Axe murders have, seeped into our cultural consciousness, inspire countless works of fiction and nonfiction. It's a story that continues to be told and retold, and each generation kind of adds their own interpretation, their own attempts to grapple with that darkness at the heart of the case.
Yeah, it's fascinating and a little unsettling, honestly, to think about the ethical implications of this cultural fascination. On the one hand, you have people who are genuinely interested in history, and they're trying to understand the events of that night and the context in which they occurred. But on the other hand, you have the potential for exploitation, for profiting from a tragedy, and for sensationalizing the suffering of others.
Right. It's a delicate balance, and one that we as consumers of true crime should always be mindful of. It's crucial to approach these stories with sensitivity, to remember that real lives were lost, and to avoid trivializing the suffering of the victims and their families.
That's such an important point. It's so easy to get caught up in the mystery, the intrigue, the thrill of the chase, and lose sight of the human cost of these tragedies.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's equally important, I think, to be critical consumers of the information that we encounter. With a case like this that has been, so heavily sensationalized and explored through all these different forms of media, it's crucial to separate fact from fiction, to question our sources, and to avoid perpetuating, harmful stereotypes or unsubstantiated theories.
So what do we take away from all of this? What is the lasting legacy of the Villisca Axe Murders?
I believe the Villisca Axe Murders, they serve as this stark reminder of the complexities of human nature, the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most, seemingly peaceful communities, and the enduring power of unanswered questions. It's a story that continues to challenge us, to fascinate us, and to remind us that even in the face of, unimaginable horror, the human spirit seeks understanding, resolution, and maybe even a glimmer of hope that such darkness will never prevail.
It's a haunting and unforgettable tale.
Yeah.
And it continues to resonate with us, over a century later. And perhaps that's the most enduring legacy of all. The reminder that some stories, even the most tragic ones, they refuse to be forgotten. They linger in our collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And they prompt us to confront the darkness, to seek answers, and to never stop searching for the truth, no matter how elusive it may be.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of one of America's most enduring mysteries.
Don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle and our YouTube channel for more captivating stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and as always, stay vigilant.